Okay, welcome back, everyone. Thank you for being here. I hope you're doing well. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Very thankful for your participation here. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow this channel. Use this to strengthen your practice, or just to find out about Gosho. What is Gosho? What is Nichiren? But more broadly than that, this channel also covers the entire spectrum of Buddhism. So there's all kinds of little miscellaneous things about ego or time or confrontations, those kind of things. There's videos on those right now. We're still working our way through the voluminous letters and treatises of Nichiren Shonin of the 13th century shogunate Japan. And the corrections, the reformations of Buddhist practice and scholarship. And so we're in the midst of a petition that Nichiren wrote for, it's Shijo Kingo, isn't it? Obviously, this is an excellent opportunity, since this is a letter being sent on behalf of Shijo Kingo. Submitted by Shijo Nakatsukasa Nojo Yoritomo, which is Shijo Kingo. We'll find out that this letter may never have made it to the government official that it was meant to go to, Lord Emma, the landowners for whom the samurai and Shijo Kingo specifically work for. So there's some debate as to that. But still, in the meantime, those transmitting the letter were able to read it, and Nichiren knows this. So the letter is written in a way, even though he's using Sammi-bo's debate at this particular occasion, it's kind of an interesting way that, Nichiren is relaying this story of his own doctrine as told by Sammi-bo in a debate against this true word monk who's trying to sway the populace who's there at the time, listening to him. So it's an interesting way to teach, is what I'm getting to. He's able to disseminate his correctness of teaching on the Lotus Sutra practice and Buddhism in its entirety through a surrogate, which is, such a wonderful exploration of the power of Sangha, right? Because this ultimately, Buddhism is a practice that's very individual. It's very up to you. What your practice can be, what it will be, how it promulgates, how it affects your world, the world around you, your inner world, your outer world, you might say it that way. So, anyway, let us continue where I left off. Who is this speaking right now? Okay, so this is Sammi-bo speaking, I believe. And at least therefore he has undergone countless persecutions. Yeah. Arrived at the ruler's wrath. I myself, Sammi-bo, was one of those who accompanied him when the wrath of the authorities fell upon him on the 12th day of the 9th month in the 8th year of the Bunei era, 1271. Now, as you know, when events or discussions are had around this specific of a date and time, this is a very formal way of proclaiming what is being talked about. This isn't just some idle opinion, in other words. This represents fact, as is known, right? So, and I was considered equally guilty and came close to being beheaded myself. Despite all this, do you still say that I hold my own life dear? So this again is a speaking on. Sammi-bo is responding to this monk's own words, saying that if the people speak so, then we have to follow them, and rather than the teachings of Shakyamuni. In other words, a very political statement, right? Trying to appease the people to make them think that they're more important than the very teaching that they all profess to be following. It's really, it defies logic, but this is human behavior, isn't it? So, as he points out, in all of the sutra, and certainly through Nichiren, it is our resolve to practice Myoho Renge Kyo that is far more, how shall I say it, fundamental to our life's existence than to worry about petty matters of daily life. And so it's rather dramatically said that even at the expense of my own life, I will chant Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, because that is far more profound a practice to attain enlightenment than it is to protect myself against vilification because I practice. And that's very specific. It's not just about vilification for anything, but even so, in the face of losing one's life, one should be of a resolute mind of attaining Buddhahood. Myoho Renge Kyo, right? So with this sort of a resolve. And what this monk is suggesting is that whichever way the wind blows, certainly that must be right. Very, very insipid politicking. As Ryuzo-bo, this monk, closed his mouth and turned pale, Sammi-ko persisted. See, I've shown you to be a hypocrite. Now I'm going to keep going. Quote, with such paltry wisdom, it is unwarranted for you to declare that you will dispel people's doubts, right? This was his whole thing. Come see me and I will dispel your doubts. The monks, sure of suffering and superior intent, thought they were the correct teaching and intended to save the people. They thought they knew the correct teaching, but they intended to save the people. But they fell into the hell of incessant suffering along with their disciples and lay believers. And this is a story, of course, from the sutras. If you, with your limited knowledge of Buddhist doctrines, ouch, preach in an attempt to save people, then surely you and your followers will fall into the hell of incessant suffering, just as is predicted in the teachings. You had better reconsider such preaching from this day forth. I had not felt that I should speak in this way, but I, too, cannot be exempted from the Buddha's warning that if one sees a misguided monk sending others into hell with his evil teachings and fails to reproach that monk and expose his errors, then one is oneself betraying the Buddha's teachings. That's a powerful statement. Moreover, I feel pity that all those, both high and low, who listen to your preaching will fall into the hell or the evil paths. Right? Because if you believe erroneous things, then you live your life by them, whether you intend to or not. And if you live your life by erroneous thoughts and teachings, then your life is in misery. That is the hell of incessant suffering. Follow? Therefore, I am speaking out in this way. Is not a person of wisdom one who admonishes the ruler when the country is endangered or corrects others' mistaken views? But in your case, no matter what error you may see, you will no doubt refuse to correct it for fear of society's reaction. Your popularity matters more than what you profess to be an expert teacher of. Because of this, I am powerless to help you. Right? As I often say, this is an individual practice. I can point out errors, but if you're not willing to listen to them or take them seriously, I can't do anything about it other than point them out to you. It's up to you to change your path, right? Same thing applies to me, to everyone. In everything, not just Buddhism. Even if I had Manjushri's wisdom and Purna's eloquence, they would be wasted on you. So saying, Sammi-ko rose to leave, but the members of the audience, rejoicing, joined their palms together and implored him to stay and teach them the Buddhist doctrines for a little while. However, Sammi-ko left. I have no now this is Nichiren talking. I have no further details to add. So you may surmise what really happened. How could a person who believes in the Lotus Sutra and aspires to the Buddha way possibly contemplate misbehavior or deliberately use foul language when the Buddhist teaching is being expounded? However, I leave this to your judgment. So once again, he's being humble and backing off, but he's not backing off from saying the facts as he knows them, right? So he's saying, this is on you now. The same way Sammi-ko said it to the monk, right? Very exemplary. Having declared myself to be a follower of the sage Nichiren, I returned home and reported to you exactly what had happened during the debate. So this is the letter he received from Shijo Kingo, right? Moreover, no one was present on that occasion whom I did not know. So they all knew I was there. What you heard must have been the fabrication of those who harbored jealousy against me. In other words, there were reports from other rumors mongers that went to Nichiren, if he did in fact hear other reports, that were reporting this story of Sammi-ko, actually not even saying it was Sammi-ko, saying it was Shijo Kingo, and slandering Shijo Kingo, trying to gain favor with Emma and get him out of the way so they could get rid of that stupid Nichiren follower and they could rise to prominence and be, the little tattletales that they are, fabricating these charges against Shijo Kingo so they could get his land, get his wealth, blah, blah, blah. And so he sends this to Nichiren and asks for Nichiren's help. That's why we're in this letter now. If you quickly summon them to face me in your presence, the truth of the matter will be brought to light. In other words, he's saying, Nichiren, I need your help, but what I want you to do is call these fabricators to, in front of you, with an audience with you, have me there to rebut what they're saying and see if they don't back down. In your official letter, you also state, quote, I revere the elder of Gokuraku-ji Temple as the world-honored one reborn. But this I cannot accept. The reason is that if what the sutra states is true, the sage Nichiren is the envoy of the thus come one, who attained enlightenment in the remote past, the manifestation of Bodhisattva's superior practices, the votary of the essential teaching of the Lotus Sutra, and the great leader in the fifth 500-year period following the Buddha's passing. In an attempt to have this sage executed, the Honorable Ryokan submitted a letter of petition to the authorities proposing that he be beheaded. But for some reason, the execution was not carried out, and he was instead exiled far away to Sado Island. Was this not the doing of the Honorable Ryokan? I am sending you a copy of his petition together with this letter. So this is all going to Lord Emma as not only an explanation of the event and Shijo Kingo's position on rebutting it, but also that there's a history of deception and wrong statements that have been made and well documented. Even though the monk, continuing, Ryokan, preaches day and night on each of the 6 days of purification against killing even a blade of grass, he actually proposed that the monk who propagates the correct teaching of the Lotus Sutra be beheaded. What a hypocrite, right? Has he not contradicted his own words? Is the monk Ryokan himself not possessed by the heavenly devil, right? Daraku Tenomao? Let me explain how this situation came about. Whenever the monk Ryokan preached, he would lament, quote, I am endeavoring to help all the people in Japan become observers of the precepts, and to have them uphold the 8 precepts so that an end can be put to all the killings in this country and the drunkenness in the entire land. But Nichiren's slander has prevented me from achieving my desire. He blamed Nichiren. Hearing of this, the sage Nichiren declared, quote, somehow I must overturn the delusion of his great arrogance, and save him from the agonies of the hell of incessant suffering. Hearing this, I, Yoritomo, and his other disciples all anxiously advised him, saying, even though you speak out of profound compassion as a champion of the Lotus Sutra, since the Honorable Ryokan is revered throughout Japan, especially by the samurai in the Kamakura, perhaps you should refrain from making strong statements. You're an exemplary votary of the Lotus Sutra, a practitioner of Shakyamuni's Buddhism, but maybe this isn't the time to demonstrate how loyal and how resolved your mind is to Buddhist practice, right? His own people were afraid for him to stand up to such authority. Then, at the time of the great drought, the government ordered the monk Ryokan to perform a ceremony for rain on the 18th day of the 6th month in the 8th year of Bunen era, 1271, cyclical sign Kanoto Hitsuji, in order to save the people. Now, we know this is a very formal statement, so this was an edict and a request by the ruler of the land to have this monk, revered monk, get rid of the drought so that they could eat, right? Ultimately, I mean. Hearing this news, the sage Nichiren said, quote, although meditations for rain are a trifling matter, perhaps I should take this opportunity to demonstrate to everyone the power of the law that I embrace, end quote. He sent a message to the monk Ryokan saying, quote, if the Honorable Ryokan brings about rainfall within 7 days, I, Nichiren, will stop teaching that the Nembutsu leads to the hell of incessant suffering and become his disciple, observing the 250 precepts. So, as you know, the 250 precepts go back to Hinayana, very early teachings. They no longer apply. They're no longer useful for Buddhist practice in the age of samurai. In the latter day, our age, it just makes no sense to follow those precepts. We're well beyond that level of understanding, and those, in fact, would not help us in our achieving Buddhahood. Only chanting Namo Myoho Renge Kyo is what will work for us in the latter day. It's much more immediate and more to the point. It is suitable to our capacity and our obstacles in order to attain our enlightenment. And so Nembutsu, as you know, is the chanting of Amida Buddha's name, which is what Ryokan was preaching. So Nichiren says, if you can make it rain in 7 days, I'll quit being a Lotus Sutra practitioner and I'll chant the Amida mantra along with you. I'll become one of your followers. How could Ryokan resist, right? And yet, as Nichiren already pointed out, this whole thing of praying for rain it's a political maneuver by the Lord to show compassion for his people. It's kind of not a trick, but it's sort of an appeasement, okay? But Nichiren goes ahead and uses it, since it's such a political thing, to demonstrate his resolve in Myoho Renge Kyo, right? But if no rain falls, that will show clearly that the Honorable Ryokan is deliberately confusing and misleading others, though he appears to be observing the precepts. In ancient times, there were, and this is another hidden point in this statement, is that if you believe that praying for rain will make it rain, then you're demonstrating your ancient ritual silly beliefs, your mysticism, which isn't a part of actual Buddhism. It's this other, and now it's like saying, indigenous people in North America's used to stomp on the ground and do these little dances and so forth to appease gods. We understand they were sincere in doing that. We understand their reasoning and why they did it. But for us to do that today is kind of, it's not kind of, it's actually insulting to the history of those people and those people today. Because really, we're ridiculing what their actual motivations and sensations were, because we know as modern people that that's malarkey. That doesn't really work. That's an interesting diversion, and we can use it as an honorific to display our respect for those rituals and how they developed in those societies, but to actually perform them with an expectation of a result, come on. That either means you're extremely deluded or you're really insulting the practice in general. So, in ancient times, there were many instances in which the supremacy of one teaching over another was determined through meditations for rain, such as the challenge between Gomyo and the great teacher Dengyo, or between Shubin and Kobo. The sage Nichiren sent this message to the monk Ryokan through the intermediaries, the monk Suobo and the lay monk Irusawa, who are Nembutsu believers. In addition to being Nembutsu believers, this monk and lay monk are Ryokan's disciples and do not yet believe in Nichiren's teachings. So the sage Nichiren said to them, "We will decide whose teachings are correct through this meditation for rain. If it rains within 7 days, you can believe that you will be reborn in the Pure Land and by virtue of the 8 precepts and the Nembutsu, which you already uphold. But if it does not rain, you should place your resolute mind in the Lotus Sutra alone." Not me, Nichiren, in the Lotus Sutra alone. I keep pointing this out because people make the mistake to this day that we are practicing some form of Buddhism called Nichiren Buddhism, and that is not the case. We do not perform Buddhist meditations based on Nichiren's system of Buddhism, of the teachings of Buddhism. We practice Shakyamuni's Buddhism. We practice with the elucidation of Nichiren's scholarship about Shakyamuni's Buddhism, and more specifically on the final teachings of the Dharma in the Lotus Sutra. Before Nichiren Dengyo, Miao Lo, Tendai, there were other great scholars, bodhisattvas if you will, who did the same thing for the people of their time. Nichiren is in our time, so this is why we use his scholarship, but we're all practicing the final ultimate teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha. So let's just be clear on that, okay? And Nichiren is clear on it too, if you read carefully. Delighted to hear this, these two delivered the message to Ryokan at Gorakuji Temple, right? Thinking, haha, we've got Nichiren now, right? Our boss is going to love us, right? With tears of joy, the monk Ryokan, along with more than 120 of his disciples, offered meditations, the sweat of their faces rising up in steam, and their voices resounding to the heavens, right? All chanting Amida Buddha. They chanted the Nembutsu, the Meditation for Rain Sutra, and the Lotus Sutra, and the monk Ryokan preached on the 8 precepts in an effort to produce rainfall within 7 days. Right? It would be a great prize for him to convert Nichiren, because Nichiren had quite a formidable following by then. And not only would he get all of those followers, but think of the political gain he would make with the rulers of the country. You finally silence this Lotus Sutra madman Nichiren? Whew, we will shower you with wealth and land and everything else, right? So he's very motivated. When no sign of rain appeared after 4 or 5 days, he grew frantic and summoned hundreds of his disciples from Tahoji Temple to join him, exhausting all his powers of meditation. But within 7 days, not a drop of rain fell. At that time, now you would think the odds were, and he was motivated because it's going to rain. You know, all I got to do is be offering meditations during the time period when it starts to rain, and even if a single drop falls, right? Ha! See, my authority, my understanding of Buddhist teachings far superior, right? Because look what I did. At that time, the sage Nichiren sent a messenger to him on no less than 3 occasions, saying, quote, a wanton woman called Izumi Shikibu and a monk named Noin, who broke the precepts, were each able to cause rain immediately with just a 31-syllable poem that made little sense and was full of excess flourishes. Why is it, then, that the Honorable Ryokan, who observes all the precepts and rules, has mastered the Lotus and True Word doctrines, and is renowned as the foremost in compassion, cannot produce rainfall within 7 days, even when assisted by hundreds of his followers? Ooh, he's just rubbing his nose in it, right? Consider this. If one cannot cross a moat 10 feet wide, can one cross a moat that is 20 or 30 feet wide? If you cannot bring about rainfall, which is easy, how can you attain rebirth in the Pure Land and achieve Buddhahood, which is difficult? Quote, accordingly, you should, from this point on, revise your prejudiced views, which lead you to hate Nichiren. If you fear for your next life, come to me immediately, as you will have promised. I will teach you the law that causes rain to fall and the path that leads to Buddhahood. Have you not failed to produce rain within 7 days? The drought intensifies, and the 8 winds blow all the more violently, while the people's grief grows deeper and deeper. Stop your meditations immediately. When the messengers conveyed the sage Nichiren's message word for word at the hour of the monkey, 3 to 5 p.m., on the 7th day, the monk Ryokan wept, and his disciples and lay believers also cried aloud in their chagrin. When the sage Nichiren incurred the wrath of the government authorities and was asked about this matter, he told the story as it really happened. So he said, quote, if the monk Ryokan had had any sense of shame, he would have disappeared from public view and retired to a mountain forest. Or, if he had become my disciple, as he had promised, then he would have shown at least a little seeking spirit. But in actuality, he made endless false accusations against me in an attempt to have me executed. Is this the conduct of a noble monk? I, Yoritomo, also personally observed the situation. I was there. Where other affairs are concerned, I would not dare to address my lord in this fashion, but in this matter alone, however, I may consider it. I find I cannot remain silent. You state in your official letter, quote, after meeting the monk Ryozo and the elder of Gokarakuji temple, I look up to them as I would to Shakyamuni or Amida Buddha, end quote. Addressing this statement, too, with the utmost respect, I must point out that while in Kyoto, the monk Ryuzo was feeding morning and evening on human flesh, and when this became known, the monks of Enryakuji temple on Mount Hiei rose up against him, saying, quote, the world has entered the latter age, and evil demons are rampant throughout the country. We must subdue them with the power of the mountain king. They burned down his dwelling and intended to punish him, but he quickly escaped, and no one knew of his whereabouts. This is Ryuzo. At this point, he suddenly appeared in Kamakura and was again eating human flesh, causing right-minded people to tremble in fear. Nevertheless, you say you respect him as a Buddha or Bodhisattva. How can I, as your retainer, refrain from pointing out my lord's error? I wonder what the level-headed people in our clan think about this matter. So this is Shijo Kingo rebuking his lord Emma. This is something Nichiren constantly warned him against doing. Even though you see these errors and stuff, you owe a lot of temperance on this guy's part. for your wealth and your safety and your family and your landownings. I know he's doing wrong. You're correct. But perhaps, shakabuku isn't appropriate at this moment. But there he is doing it, writing this letter, right? In the same letter, you also state, this is Nichiren saying, quote, to defer to one's lord or parents, whether they are right or wrong, is exemplary conduct according to the will of Buddhas and deities, and also social propriety. That's filial responsibility, right? End quote. As this matter is of utmost importance, I will refrain from expressing my own opinion and instead cite authoritative works of sages and worthies. The classical of filial piety states, quote, in a case of moral wrong, a son must admonish his father, and a minister must admonish his lord. End quote. Cheng Xuan says, quote, if a lord or a father behaves unjustly and his minister or son fails to remonstrate with him, then the state of the family will come to ruin, end quote. The new narration states, quote, if one fails to remonstrate against one's ruler's tyranny, one is not a loyal minister. If one fails to speak out for fear of death, one is not a man of courage, end quote. The great teacher Dengyo states, quote, in general, where unrighteousness is concerned, a son must admonish his father, and a minister must admonish his lord. Truly, one should know this, as in the case with lord and minister, or with father and son, so it is with teacher and disciple. A disciple must speak out when his teacher goes astray, end quote. The Lotus Sutra states, quote, we are nothing for our bodies, we care nothing for our bodies or lives, but are anxious only for the unsurpassed way, end quote. The Nirvana Sutra reads, quote, for example, it is like a royal envoy skilled in discussion and clever with expedient means, who, when sent on a mission to another land, would rather, even though it cost him his life, in the end conceal none of the words of his ruler. Wise persons, too, do this, end quote. So it's truth, 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 honesty, 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 above all, right? So even though Nichiren has cautioned Shijo Kingo before, he is saying to him now in this letter, you are right to question your Lord's behavior as a loyal retainer for him. So it's your duty. I understand this. Where are we, Thomas? Okay. The great teacher Chang'an says, quote, a royal envoy would rather, even though it cost him his life, in the end conceal none of the words of his ruler's means that one's body is insignificant while the law is supreme. One should give one's life in order to propagate the law, end quote. He also states, quote, one who destroys or brings confusion to the Buddha's teachings is betraying them. If one befriends another person but lacks the mercy to correct him, one is in fact his enemy, the Buddha's enemy. But one who reprimands and corrects an offender, rids the offender of evil, is acting as his parent, end quote. My fellow samurai may think that I, Yoritomo, am... Oops. Sorry about that. It's my little pill alarm, so I'll take my pills in a moment. Sorry. My fellow samurai may think that I, Yoritomo, am lacking in propriety toward you, Lord Emma, but in all other worldly affairs I will resolutely heed the words of my lord and my parents. I can only lament when I see my lord, to whom I am so profoundly indebted, being deceived by those who embrace evil teachings and in danger of falling into the hell or evil paths. Because King Ajatashatru took Devadatta and the 6 non-Buddhist teachers as his mentors and opposed Shakyamuni Buddha, all the people of the kingdom of Magadha became enemies of Buddhism, and the 580,000 clansmen of the king also opposed the Buddha's disciples. Among them, only Minister Jivaka was the Buddha's disciple. The great king disapproved of his minister's devotion to the Buddha, just as my lord disapproves of me, Yoritomo. That's Shijo Kingo, right? But in the end, he discarded the erroneous doctrines of the other 6 ministers and took a resolute mind in the correct teaching that Jivaka espoused. Perhaps in the same way, I will save you in the end. Man, he's taking a huge risk here. But he's doing it couched in a remonstration against these other samurai that are misreporting this event with Yuzo and making it look like Shijo Kingo caused all this trouble. And Shijo Kingo is trying to set the record straight with his own boss, his own lord, right? While at the same time saying that his own lord is being deceived by these people because he's not practicing correctly. Whew. He's laying down his life here. When I speak this way, you may wonder how I dare to compare you to Ajatashatru, who committed the 5 cardinal sins. But it is clear in the light of the sutra that your offense is 100, 1,000, 10,000 times graver than his, though I hesitate to say such a thing. Oh, samurai. Yeah, you didn't hesitate much. Okay, the Lotus Sutra states, quote, now this threefold world is all my domain, and the living beings in it are all my children, end quote. If this sculptural statement is correct, Shakyamuni Buddha is the father and mother, teacher and sovereign to all living beings in Japan. Amida Buddha does not possess these 3 virtues. However, you ignore the Buddha of the 3 virtues and invoke the name of another, Buddha Amida, day and night, morning and evening, 60,000 or 80,000 times a day. Is this not an unfilial deed? It was the thus come one Shakyamuni himself who originally taught that Amida had vowed to save all people. But in the end he regretted it, saying, quote, I am the only person who can rescue and protect others, end quote. After that, he never again taught that there are 2 or 3 Buddhas who can save the people. No one has 2 fathers or 2 mothers. What sutra says that Amida is the father of this country? What treatises indicates him as its mother? It's very easy to dissemble this Nembutsu, this Amida Buddha fascination. It only exists because of hundreds of years of deception in Japan by those who would take down Dengyo's established ordination platform of the Tendai sect. The teachings of Nembutsu, he goes on, such as the Meditation Sutra, were expounded provisionally in preparation for the Lotus Sutra. They are like the scaffolding used when building a padyeta. Some think that because the Nembutsu teachings and the Lotus Sutra are both a part of Buddhism, they differ only in that one was expounded earlier and one later. But these people are laboring under a profound misconception, right? Just because we teach the alphabet at the same time as we teach quantum physics doesn't mean that teaching the alphabet or quantum physics are equal teachings. They're both useful, but for different reasons and for different stages of learning, right? They are like someone foolish enough to prize the scaffolding even after the padyeta has been completed, or like someone who says that the stars are brighter than the sun. Concerning such persons, the sutra states, quote, though I teach and instruct them, they do not believe or accept my teachings. When his life comes to an end, he will enter the Avicii hell, end quote. All the inhabitants of Japan at present are people who reject Shakyamuni Buddha while invoking the name of Amida Buddha, who discard the Lotus Sutra and believe in the meditation and other sutras. Or they are laymen and women who make offerings to these slanderers, or the renowned monks and even the ruler of the country who revere as wise men those who in fact commit the 5 or 7 cardinal sins, or the 8 offenses. Of such people, the sutra states that they, quote, will keep rejecting this cycle of rebirth in the Avicii hell for a countless number of kalpas, end quote. They'll keep repeating this cycle of birth and death, which is the Avicii hell, right? Moment to moment life. Being aware to some small degree of these errors, I have ventured to bring them to your attention. Among those in service, despite their differences in rank, there are none who does not honor his Lord, each according to his station. If, knowing that my Lord will fare badly in both his life and the next, I were to remain silent in fear of my fellow samurai or of the world at large, then would I not be guilty of complicity in your offense? No one can deny that the Nakatatsukasa of 2 generations, my father and myself, have dedicated our lives in service to our lords. When your father incurred the wrath of the authorities, his hundreds of retainers all shifted their allegiances. Among them, my late father, Yorikazu, alone remained in a resolute mind, full to the end, accompanying him into exile to the province of Izu. Shortly before the battle that took place in Kamakura on the 12th day of the 2nd month in the 11th year of Bun-ei era, I, Yoritomo, was in the province of Izu, but no sooner had I received word at the hour of the monkey on the 10th day that I hastened alone over the Hakone Pass and joined with 7 others who vowed before you to put an end to their lives. But the world at length grew calm again, and my Lord now lives in peace. Since that time you have included me among those who enjoy your trust in all matters, whether trifling or significant. How, then, could I estrange myself from you? I would obediently follow you even into the next life. If I should attain Buddhahood, I would save my Lord as well. And if you were to attain Buddhahood, I expect you would do the same for me. So I listened to the sermons of the various monks and inquired into which teaching leads to Buddhahood. And I came to believe that according to the teachings of the Lotus Sutra, the sage Nichiren is the sovereign of the threefold world, the father and mother of all living beings, and the emissary of the thus come one Shakyamuni, Bodhisattva superior practices. More than 400 years have now passed since the evil teaching called the True Word School was introduced to Japan. The great teacher Dengyo brought it from China in the 24th year of the Nyaku era, 805, but he considered it undesirable for this country, and therefore he did not allow it to be designated as a school in its own right, defining it merely as an expedient teaching of the Tendai Lotus School. Later, when the great teacher Dengyo had passed away, the great teacher Kobo, not to be outdone by him, took advantage of the opportunity to establish the true word teaching as an independent school, but Renrakuji Temple on Mount Hiei would not accept it. However, Jikaku and Chisho were of limited insight, and although they lived on Mount Hiei, their hearts inclined toward Kobo of the Tojo-ji Temple. Perhaps for this reason, they turned against their teacher Dengyo, and for the first time established a true word school at Enrakuji. This marked the beginning of our country's ruin. So, I'm going to pause there, because now Shijo Kingo, I don't know if it's through his own scholarship or through his understanding of the scholarship of Nichiren, but there's no reason to think that he doesn't know history this well. But he's now telling his Lord, he's trying to give his Lord Emma kind of a way out here, saying, this was established hundreds of years ago, and we're following that lineage, and that was the beginning of the downfall of this country. Not the shogunate or the samurai, as some of our enemies would have us think, but actually our break from the correct practice of Buddhism. And Nichiren today represents the reformer, the return to the sanity and the correct practice of Buddhism. And what you're doing now is, maybe we'll see, but I think he's indicating that maybe the reason you're getting these false reports and these urgencies to have me beheaded or take my lands or it's creating a lot of unrest in your power structure, your power, right? And who you are. It's not reflecting well on you. And so not only am I rebuking what these people are saying and correcting what actually happened with fact, but part of it is in the way that you're practicing Buddhism. You're already setting yourself up. You're already, well, I was going to say setting yourself up for confused messaging and mismessaging. But in truth, you've bought into it from the start. So this is why it exists among your ranks, or our ranks, right? And this started long before you. This isn't your fault specifically, but you can correct it. This has happened ever since these political maneuverings of these lesser intellectuals. So we'll see how this closes, because in the next video we'll be able to finish this ghost and we'll see how it resolves. I'm curious as you are to see how this moves along and what Nichiren has to say about it. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, thank you for being here. This is kind of exciting. It feels like a good series on Netflix or something. But I think there's a lot in us in it for us to observe our sense of almost urgency to manifest our Buddha nature in our daily lives, and our resolve toward that. And certainly when it comes to other Buddhists that we encounter, we've been talking a lot about that lately, that there can be confrontations. How do we behave in those? How much responsibility should we take? And how should we approach remonstrating, if need be? There's a lot of awareness, a lot of politic in all this, but that's samsara. So we have to understand how to navigate samsara, lest we fall into, in the words of Buddhism, evil paths, or in the words of current day vernacular, bad habits, self-destructive behavior, wrong thinking. Okay, that's enough on that. Can't wait to see you in the next one. How long did we go? I'm averaging around this amount of time for each video. By the way, if these videos are just too long for you, even as podcasts, again, I'm not hearing anything to that effect in the comments. So I'm going to assume that this works for you. There's a lot of long format videos these days. A lot of YouTubers are adopting long formats. This isn't as long as most of the others that I know of, but I think it just, we need a certain amount of time to articulate our thoughts, and certainly when it comes to Buddhism, there's a lot of complexity in these teachings. It's helpful. I always I take it again as programming. When you watch a series on your television, phone, whatever. Half-hour shows are a fun divertisement, but you very rarely remember much of them. It's more the hour-long programs that develop more in our minds and have more of an effect that we can carry over into the next episode, right? So I'm trying to be around 50 minutes or so. Anyway, it's up to you to let me know. Otherwise, I'm kind of comfortable with this time. As you can probably sense, I can go on for many hours. But I think at some point, there's so much information that we cover that it just starts to get to be a little bit much. So let me know. In the meantime, have a wonderful day. Keep your practice strong. And don't forget to download the podcasts if that's helpful, a helpful tool for your practice, okay? Take care. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo.